Hey there, everybody. Welcome. This is our review of The Handmaid's Tale Season 4, Episode 2. This is a story of Nightshade. This is a story of surprising deaths to characters whose names we barely know.
Yep.
It is also about a big surprise for Serena. Nick has entered the metaphorical chat in a kind of unpredictable way.
Yeah.
We got a lot to get into here. We don't waste too much time on the build-up because you know what we want from you guys before we even get into this episode? We want you to subscribe because guess what? We are covering The Handmaid's Tale all season. Clearly, just based on these 2 episodes alone, there's going to be a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about. So let's just get into the big news, which is that Serena is pregnant and it is Fred's. And what is the most sort of interesting about one of the wives, a Gilead wife, actually getting pregnant is that this whole sort of system that was put together by some of the men at the beginning of this whole thing was, how are we going to convince our wives that being with these handmaids is something that is required, that basically everyone is for sure infertile and there's no other way to get around this. So this is a great idea and have the wives accept it. Now we're in a situation where one of the wives is pregnant. So it kind of unravels this whole, we need to have handmaids because you don't.
Wait, so you're telling me that the commanders are deceitful, manipulative, horrendous human beings?
Shocking, I know,
Wait, where did this come into? Yeah, what a surprise that it just turns out that they have found another way to be the worst human beings imaginable and just throw out a bunch of hooey in order to get what they want.
Yeah, and it sort of then begs more of the question. I know that Gilead and everything that's going on in the States is all about faith and less about science. And we have seen that whole episode last season with everyone, especially June, being in the hospital while everything was going on. So we know that there is still doctors and there is still hospitals, but how much sort of science is really out there? Is this a miracle that, she got pregnant or not?
It feels just sort of like the rules of Gilead are there are no rules other than just a facade that makes it look like there are. And it seems kind of roundabout, but we kind of just talked a little bit about this with episode 1 where Mrs. Keys is technically a wife, and yet there's all these men who are being brought in to do these unspeakable things to her.
Yeah, which again was sort of okay, so where are we with this? Because they had kind of set up that the wives were not able to get pregnant, or that the husbands were unable to get them pregnant for whatever reason. They had to bring in these handmaids. But then Mrs. Keys has this revolving door of men that have been allowed to come in and do these unspeakable things to her in hopes of getting her pregnant. So it's kind of like, well, then where do the handmaids come in? Because that is supposed to be the purpose of bringing in handmaids, is that they can have children and the wives are unable.
At least now we sort of have an idea as, okay, this is what the story for Serena moving forward is going to be. Because
some of the lies are starting to unravel with Gilead, where the women are starting to see more of the truth, even though a lot of them already know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm interested to explore this a little bit further. I will be fine if we choose to explore this without Fred. I don't care that this baby Fred can still go. I still don't care about him whatsoever.
Yeah, but he's going to be a big part of this story now. And now that they are also in Canada and she's pregnant and he's the father, where does that actually leave them in all of this? Because we also saw that conversation with Serena and Fred in the chapel where she was trying to work some magic over on him before she found out she was pregnant, and him saying, you're getting rusty, this isn't working on me anymore, we're different. And she really thought that once he was out of Gilead that he would be that same man again that she once knew. So much time has changed, and even her losing her finger didn't stop her from thinking that once he got out of Gilead that he would go back to being that same man. And that feels a lot like what this episode is entirely about.
Yeah.
People that once they are in Gilead change, and that it is difficult and sometimes impossible to go back.
And it doesn't even really matter who you were talking about with that, because we could be talking about a kid, like Asher, which, by the way, I have heard at least like 3 or 4 TV characters named Asher. I have not met a single Asher in my entire life.
No, I'm really glad that they brought in this character of Asher and the idea that Canada was not ready for this plane of kids to come in. Obviously, they didn't know that it was coming in. They take people in all the time, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of program for something like this, that kids that grew up in Gilead, that this is their mom and dad, this is their Martha, this is their way of life, are now all of a sudden shipped to another country that they have never been to before, that they do not understand that way of life. It is not something that they are familiar with, comfortable with, that they want to be part of. They want to go home. They want to go back to their Marthas, back to their moms and dads. There's no program in place to be able to help these kids adjust and move into what is now their new life. What is the reality? That conversation with Moira, am I ever going to see my mom and dad again? No. There's no sugarcoating it. It's just no.
And I think Moira and Jean, like, in their heads, they're probably thinking, oh, Asher here, he's going to be so happy to be in this new home. He's going to be free of this, oppressive, terrible society. But it's sort of those sort of things where if this is the society that Asher has known, he's not really going to understand what's oppressive and what's not entirely. He's kind of been conditioned to be in this horrific environment. They're going to have to be patient, and that's fine, because that means we get more Moira and Jean, and I'm never going to be upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, even just his name, where she's calling him Asher, and the aunt says his name is James after his father. Asher doesn't know that. This is his name that he's grown up with. You're not really able to take, I mean, how old was this kid? 10,
Yeah.
11? You can't change his name like that and all of a sudden be like, you are no longer Asher, you are now James after your father, a man that you don't really know at all. But here we are. And so you're just going to take it. It's too much change.
I did really like the introduction, or really just the further emphasizing of this Angel's Flight idea, and the way of having Luke sort of be the spokesman for this, and to have like this, because it kind of really resounds on that kind of like dystopian theme, where here you've got Luke giving this like presentation in front of all these donors, and he acts like it's like a normal charitable gathering, and it's like, these are kids that have been brought from like this horrific place. How is this happening, in real life? How is this normal?
And Luke has needed something to do. Like, we have been barely going into Canada and what's going on in Canada, so there hasn't been a lot for anyone to do. But Canada feels like it's going to be taking on a much bigger role this season. I mean, there's all these kids up there now trying to adjust. Moira's trying to help find them homes and reunite them with families. Luke is trying to raise money to make all this happen. Emily's trying to help with that too. There was a little while there that I feel like they were trying to maybe bring in a little bit of flirtation with Moira and Emily, but I really like them as friends.
Yeah, I'm fine with things sort of being the way they are. It almost feels like because they haven't given Canada enough time, they're just like occasionally like throwing darts and seeing kind of what lands over the past few seasons. It's like, okay, now guys, you've got enough story to justify doing some interesting stuff there. You've got like a good, I don't know, it feels like at least half of the characters now, including the Waterfords, are in Canada. So why not just embrace that a little bit more?
Yeah, there's going to be, I think, a lot more coming up with Canada, especially since they are keeping these kids, and Gilead is going to find a way to stop that from happening.
Are you ready for a new segment entitled Jess Calls It, in which we point out the ways in which Jess called something in a previous episode and it turned out to be true?
Yeah, so in our review for the premiere, we were talking about Mr. Keys and sort of a lot of people out there thinking that maybe he had Alzheimer's or dementia or something was going on with him. And I had felt that if that was actually the case, that Gilead would have pulled him out of his command, because
Yeah.
they have pulled people out of command for much less than that. And if they thought something like that was going on, they wouldn't have allowed somebody to stay in a position of power. It doesn't make sense for what the show has shown us. So I thought that his wife was poisoning him, that had to be the way that it was going. Because what else makes sense? She hates him. She wants him to die or be at least somewhat controllable. And then, as it turns out, she is poisoning him.
I like that it was Nightshade.
Yeah.
There you go. Because it's like...
Listen, I don't get things right that
Hey,
often. So,
this is
you know what?
This is a recurring segment, so there will be other editions coming up.
The pressure. The pressure.
See,
Listen.
Nightshade, perfect conclusion. As someone who has played a lot of Skyrim, I know that Nightshade is very bad news. I could relate to this. I have never used Nightshade. I'm just pointing that out. I'm not out for the poisoning of people.
No, but in Skyrim, we have had to use it to help cure vampirism.
Yes, see, you have learned a lot about us already in this video, but yeah, I like that they sort of answered some of our questions about, okay, how is, this commander staying in power? Where are the check-ins on this sort of farm? We certainly saw one of those, albeit in not a particularly pleasant way.
Yeah, so this was a very interesting choice for June, because she knew already that the Guardians have come to check up on the farm. They had some questions. Mrs. Keyes was able to sort of get them to go away for a little bit and come back later. But June knew that they had to move, and that they had to move immediately. She had that conversation with someone at that conference that was going on, where all these commanders were there, and they were going to be going to Chicago and causing more problems. And she told her that she needed to move immediately, that the Guardians were going to come back. They didn't have until tomorrow. But then she made this decision to put at risk all the handmaids that had put themselves at risk, and Mrs. Keyes, who had put herself at risk as well, to bring everyone in, to take a minute to poison all the commanders that were going to Chicago. And I understand why she may want to do that. She has wanted revenge, but she owes those handmaids that have all put themselves at risk and saved her life to be able to continue moving forward for the bigger picture than just a quick poisoning and then go back to the house and everyone's missing or dead.
Here's I think the problem for June right now is that, she's going to be sort of like juggling tennis balls no matter what this season, because she's got a lot to balance. But she decides, I haven't juggled tennis balls for very long, but I'm going to go ahead and set them on fire and still hope that this is going to end up being okay. It's like, I think she took on just too much at one time because she is so intent on vengeance, which I totally understand given everything that has happened to her. But it is a risk. You need people by your side to execute your goals. You can't do it all by yourself.
Yeah, and she sacrificed her whole team to be able to take out a few commanders. I mean, we're talking about the entirety of the United States. There are hundreds of thousands, people that are there that are in these positions. Taking out 30 commanders is not worth more than the handmaids that helped you, that you need as a team so that you can survive another day and then take more calculated risks. This was just too sort of fly by your seat, And,
to just add on top of everything else, then you have, here's Nick, and here is David, who, I barely even know his name is David, but okay, there's this guy getting shot down, and then June's, okay, she's already been caught, we're only in episode 2.
Yeah, that was really shocking, actually. I did not think that she was going to get caught so quickly, because I feel that June will have to be put on the wall. There's no really getting around this. Why wouldn't they, after she has helped so many of their children escape, unless they're going to use her as some sort of bargaining chip with Canada to get those kids back? And we already know she's not going to do that. So what's going to happen now? She's just going to end up on the wall?
The only only reason I have a little bit of hope for her is that it's Nick, and I think Nick will try to at least protect her in some sort of way because of the relationship that they've had. I mean, here's I guess the okay news for June. It could have been much worse in terms of the person who found her, but granted, it could also be a whole lot better.
Yeah, I mean, Nick did whisper down to her, "I'm trying to save your life," and she just stood up and was basically like, "I don't really care what you're doing.
Yeah.
I have given up my life at this point for the bigger, greater good." My only real hope is that she's actually not going to be brought back anywhere, because he asked her, "Where are the handmaids?"
Yeah.
So that tells me that even though we saw a bunch of shells on the ground and stuff like that, some people may not have made it out of there. But some of those handmaids are gone, and I don't know where they are. I'm wondering, we haven't heard anything about Mrs. Keys. Maybe she got them out. Something is going on. So is it possible that the handmaids have organized at home, that they have made it out of there? Are they going to be able to save June? I just don't know. I will not believe it if they bring June back to some sort of holding center, and after they're done getting information from her, they let her live. I'm just going to have a very hard time buying into it with the society that they've created.
Yeah, there's only so long they can keep June Osborne alive with everything that she's done. And I know you don't want to get rid of Elizabeth Moss, so you got to find another way.
Yep.
I will say this. Great use of Suffragette City during this
I
episode.
know! It's stuck in my head,
Yeah.
and I ain't even mad about it.
I know,
I
I'm not-
love David Bowie.
Wham bam, thank you, ma'am, and thank you everybody who checked out, this video. All these questions that you raised, I really hope they're just answered in episode 3 and they don't just linger on where are the handmaids and Mrs. Keys for very long.
Yeah.
But we will be here to talk about episode 3 very, very soon. So with that, let us know what you thought about season 4, episode 2. Everything with Nick, Serena. How is Elizabeth Moss? How is June gonna get out of this position? Share in the comments and give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our other ones all season long. And support us more by checking those links to the store and our Patreon. And we'll see you here next time.